Well, I'd like to welcome Luke DePron for the interview today. Luke, you are a coach. You coach entrepreneurs mainly with their fitness and health. And you run a website and you have a great podcast as well. So welcome to the show.
Yeah, appreciate you having me on, man.
So tell us a little bit more about your background and what you do.
All right, I will make this brief because I don't want to make this about me, but went to school for exercise science, moved out here to San Diego, ended up actually having a pretty devastating low back injury where I compressed a disc, which led to me doing some rehab and actually working in a rehab studio, doing a lot of corrective exercise, working with professional level athletes, a lot of guys with just low back pain, as obviously you've dealt with many times, Mark. And then ultimately I kind of transitioned back to the passion, which was like helping people step into a lifestyle of health and fitness, getting their weight in check, having more energy, feeling more productive. And, I did that through different modes of like personal training, and ultimately found like the sweet sauce was really online, because there's a level of accountability that you have to take when you have to step in and actually do the work, the actual workout. So now it's become more of lifestyle and fitness performance that I do remotely with mostly entrepreneurs, busy men as well.
Yeah, that's great. And you and I are really similar. We were just talking how we both have worked with people in person and we've worked with people online as well. And when you can go online too, you put a little bit of the work on the other person, but that gives them the responsibility, that personal individual responsibility to actually make the changes themselves, so the changes can become more permanent.
Dude, you just nailed it. You nailed it. And this is something I'll tell people who are looking to make a shift, like, oh, I'm going to go get a personal trainer. If you're going to choose to work with a personal trainer, here's how you need to approach it. You need to go learn just from a biomechanics standpoint. Like, that's the value to me of a personal trainer. But if the only way you're willing to do a workout is if that person is there babysitting you, I guarantee you are not really growing as a person. You probably won't make the tough choices when you're at a restaurant because you haven't fully committed. You haven't invested into growing into that greater version of yourself. You're allowing that trainer to oftentimes pacify you. And it was heartbreaking because I've seen and worked with enough people who had success, but also people that failed. And it was like, gosh, what is happening here? And it's because they never really had to fully step into it. It was like, okay, check the box, saw Luke, did my workout, on with my day. And it's like, I think everybody wants and is capable of definitely more than that.
Yeah, and that's part of you being a coach instead of just a cheerleader. You're not just there to cheer the person on in the moment, feed their emotion, but then when they go home, they're all alone. You're there to guide somebody every step of the way. So that's
Totally.
what I like about what you do. And so there's a couple things I want to talk about. One is the corrective exercise component of what you do, and then the other is how you help both men and women. I know you focus a little bit more with helping men on your website, but you help people manage their health and business at the same time. So a lot of times if a person focuses more on their health, they start to neglect components of the business, but you're helping entrepreneurs to be able to manage those two things.
Yeah. And by no stretch am I doing any business coaching. So for anybody listening to this, I'm not. But the reality is your health, your fitness, your wellness, it's going to impact every facet of your life. I just happen to work with a lot of high performing entrepreneurs, and ultimately they're going to realize when you got your sleep in order, you got your nutrition in order, you're exercising, you're going to just show up with more vibrance, more clarity of mind, more mental focus. So there is a direct value add oftentimes to your business, to where you're just going to be more productive. A way to give a good example of this is, imagine how your business suffers when you're sick. Like if you have a cold, how you struggle to show up and do a good job, to be a leader in a business, if you're an owner, to serve your clients or your customers. So ultimately, just showing up in your healthiest state is going to positively have an ROI for your business. And I think that's the first thing people do need to realize when they're struggling to step into that lifestyle, is they think they are taking time away from their business, when in the reality, you're often buying time back through productivity and clarity of mind and energy.
What are some of the pitfalls that people face? What are some of the common challenges that a lot of people have to managing both their health and their business?
So working with entrepreneurs, like there's a lot of type A successful entrepreneurs that are like hard driven, and they have these attributes that are really great for, say, doing a launch, or like, hey, we have to like really anchor down this quarter and hit this target. And that's great from a business standpoint, to be really, again, type A and systematized. but we're talking about a lifestyle at this point. So you need to have a little bit more built-in flexibility, which for a lot of, again, entrepreneur business people doesn't feel really congruent. So like, here's a great example. I see a lot of business folks or entrepreneurs where they're going to like double down like on these next 30 days on their health, and they get super driven when that time allows it. And they're going to make a little bit of progress, but then things are going to get busy and they're going to fall back. And it becomes this, one step forward, two steps back process, where if they allowed a little bit more flexibility, a little bit more freedom, and took it on as a lifestyle, they could actually see the process through. And I'll give a very tangible example of this. So, business owner, every Monday I have a meeting with my team. I check my numbers, my KPIs. I do this, and this, versus when it comes to their fitness, they try to have that same mindset of like, okay, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, I'm going to work out at 6 a.m. They have good intentions, but then something happens in their business and like that's going to take precedent, but they don't allow the flexibility to make the adjustments. Whereas if we just took a framework of, hey, we're committing to 3 days of working out this week, and this week it may look completely different than next week as far as how we implement those pillars. So maybe it's Monday, Wednesday, Friday this week, but next week we need to assess and realize like that's not going to work. So maybe it's Tuesday, Thursday, Sunday, but we're at least holding a guaranteed minimum standard. And that's really what it becomes about, just holding guaranteed minimum standards that we're setting that are realistic and achievable. And then eventually we kind of bump them up a little bit.
I love the idea of being flexible with the workout routines, or if you're, like for example, committing 3 days a week to working out. And if you miss working out at 6 a.m. in the morning, it's not the end of the world, that you can make it up the next day. That's important because a lot of people, including myself, I say this because if I'm trying to focus on my health, I'll make the same mistake where, let's say you do like a health challenge that's 14 days, right? And then what happens at the end of it? You feel great during the 14 days. You feel good about yourself. You reach some goals, but how sustainable is that? I run 2 businesses and I'm doing posts on Instagram, Facebook. I manage groups. I'm doing a lot of business work. So then what happens to my health? So I end up guilt tripping myself because I'm not reaching my health goals, or I'm not going to the gym or exercising as often as I can. So what kind of tactics can I try to be able to not feel so guilty when I'm not reaching these goals with my health?
Yeah. And so, well, first off, I think it's important to actually step in with sustainable strategy, right? And so like there are more efficient and effective ways to usually achieve a fitness and health goal. And I think a lot of people are taking very inefficient approaches. This is going to go down a rabbit hole, and so I won't probably go deep in this. I know we're a little tight on time. So making sure like that you have a minimal effective dose exercise plan. The big problem, and this is kind of stuff we were talking about earlier, like there's the industry side of things of what people see versus like actually what is necessary. And unfortunately, a lot of times what rises to the top isn't what's necessary, right? Like you don't have to do P90X where you work out for, every day for 90 days straight. You can do much more, again, minimal effective dose strategies. And then, so on my end, this looks like, hey, let's try to do 3 resistance training workouts each week, but then we got to get a lot of low level movement. And there's ways to like strategically like bring this into your life where it's not really like exercise, right? I just got off the phone with a guy today where it's like, hey, we just implemented, he's got 3 great mastiffs. They're 150-pound dogs. So he comes home and he walks each one individually. And it's like just things like that where it's like he's not even thinking of that as exercise because that's just part of his life. So from the sustainability standpoint, really taking that long-term picture, and 30-day challenges are great, but I guarantee if you took those same 30 workouts that you did, you stretched them out over the course of 3 months, which would average around 3 days a week, you'll actually, at the end of 3 months, show up as the guy that you want to be versus at the end of the 30 days when you quit and you're starting this whole cycle over.
I love it. That's powerful.
And I know I'm talking a million miles an hour because we're a little short on time.
Yeah, that's smart. It's a smart way to work out. So instead of clumping all your workouts together and burning yourself out, you can just stretch it out over a longer period of time. But at the end of the day, at the end of that time period, you're going to be getting better results. There's no doubt.
And man, and if like from the mindset standpoint, like here's something that I use with myself, I use with clients as well. It's like, so right now we're recording this and June just hit, right? And you can look at like these benchmarks in the future. Because you're like, how is it already June, right? We've all been locked down and like the world is going crazy. I'm like, how is it already June? This went so fast. And you got to tell yourself like, man, do you realize like Halloween is going to be here before you know it? Like it really will be. And then we always look back, and then Christmas will be here. And it's like, the question is like, which version of you is going to be there at Halloween? And like when I start thinking in those like time frames, right? Like 3 months, 6 months, now you can start actually taking strategies that are actually going to make it. So when you get to that time frame, like the version of yourself that shows up is the one that you're after, but it's not going to be done in a 21-day sprint or a 14-day, like where you buckle down hard, which I get as a business mind oftentimes can be accomplished. There is going to be a business task that like, hey, we are going to knock this out in the next 14 days. Awesome. Works in business, but it's not going to work in your body.
Yeah, it sounds like a very realistic approach. A lot of programs that you might see online or through DVDs or different programs, they just don't seem realistic. They don't seem attainable, especially if you're busy, if you run a business. When I first started working out, it started when I was 16 years old. I was reading articles on bodybuilding.com,
Yeah.
and some of these workout routines involved 5 or 6 days of working out. I'd spend over an hour in the gym, sometimes hour and 30 minutes, hour and 45 minutes. I'd be eating 6 meals a day. If you add up all the hours that I was spending towards my fitness and health, it consumed all my time. Then you get older, you got to run business, you got to work, provide for a family. So the average person doesn't have time to exercise. And a lot of people, they're so into fitness, and if they're a fitness guru, or if they're so passionate, then they just don't connect with that. It's not something
Dude,
that they can actually do.
me and you are very much on the same wavelength. So I often feel like an outsider in the fitness industry because things like getting up on a stage and doing like a bodybuilder competition, that seems so foreign and strange to me. Like that's not my personal relationship with exercise. But the majority of people, when they go to step into this and make some changes, they're taking strategy from oftentimes people who are like bikini competitors. So personally, like I'm not going to weigh my food, and I don't have most of my clients weighing and measuring their food. We use something like hand measuring or just some portion control. So you need to make sure like you don't have to live a bodybuilder or a physique competitor lifestyle to have a good looking physique. You're not going to get down to 4% body fat doing it this way, but you got to remember a bodybuilder who gets on stage at 4% body fat looks that way for one day for a few hours, and then they put body fat back on. So you don't need to go that level of detail and strategy. Again, this is all about efficient tactics. And if you just want to lose some weight, get fit, build some muscle, like you can do a lot in 3 to 4 days per week. And if those workouts are longer than an hour, you ain't working hard enough and your strategy is wrong. You're again taking a bodybuilder approach. Last little piece on that too would be most of the guys and gals that I've worked with, I do encourage have some level of a home gym. I personally haven't worked out in a traditional gym in over probably 3 or 4 years. I work out on my deck because I want to be outside. But having the capacity to do some level of a fairly good workout, which at the minimum, I'm talking probably a pair of good adjustable dumbbells, that is an amazing strategy for where the time you spent driving to the gym and back, you might have been able to do one of your workouts. It doesn't mean you got to do them all there, but to have that ability to when life does get busy and your kid gets sick and business is, stuff's going on, you still have the capacity to get a level of it in without punting on it completely.
Yeah, those are great recommendations and good advice. The other way that you and I are similar is our approach to corrective exercise.
Yeah.
Meaning that we're not just about giving people these exercise routines that they just blow through. We talked about P90X. I did P90X. You might have done it too.
I've never done it.
Many people have done it. I've enjoyed it.
Okay.
But you're doing a lot of movements. If you're not familiar with exercise, you might be training the wrong movement patterns, or you might be reinforcing a bad habit. So what is your approach when it comes to the actual performance of exercise?
Yeah. And so, man, this is like, I was going to do a video on this. It's really hard to explain to people, but you can do more of an exercise wrong than right. And I have a pretty good visual for this. Most people have done a plank. And if you've ever done like a group exercise class and you guys are like all doing planks, at the end of doing that plank, when everybody gets tired, they do one of two things. You either kick your ass up in the air or you drop your hips down. And if you look around in the room, everybody's kind of starting to do one or two of these. And the reason, and if you ask yourself, like, why does that happen? It happens because those positions, less muscle fiber is required to support it. So you're literally actually doing less. And once you realize that every exercise has this path of least resistance that your body will kind of go into to where it turns on less muscle fiber and you can do more repetitions, you'll start to flip on your head what you're trying to do. So And my goal when I'm working out is, and with clients, it's like, we're trying to figure out how we can do as little as possible by making it so hard. And this comes from two things: the neuromuscular connection. Can you turn on your muscle fiber? And then good quality biomechanics. And good biomechanics, basically, we're talking about how you move through a few specific movement patterns. Rather than thinking that there's thousands of exercises that you could do, which true there are, if you start to think about, there's just more movement patterns, and then exercises exist within those patterns. So for me, there's hinging, there's squatting, there's pushing, and there's pulling. And then within each of those movement patterns, there's just a few good fundamental exercises that we want to really master and then just build strength on with those. So, my average client probably uses 9 to 12 exercises. And if you get strong through some of these exercises, these foundational exercises that are also just movement patterns. So a thing like a split squat is just getting up off of the ground with one leg. If you get strong through that, you can go through and do a P90X, right? Like, I've never done P90X, but I could go through that because I have a foundation of strength that's good, that's built on good movement patterns. So from a corrective side, that might mean, like, if you do have some postural dysfunction, you might have to work and do some specific stretching and some specific mobility work. You may have to do a level of corrective exercise, right? If you have like a collapsed arch, you're going to have to deal with that. You can't go do jumping lunges in P90X if you got a collapsed arch, because you're going to be seeing Marc for your medial meniscus, right? Like, there's going to be some issues. So backing things off and doing foundational patterns of movement and building strength on them. Rant over. Sorry.
Yeah, that's really key. I harp on that a lot as well, because you could just be reinforcing bad patterns and wearing out a particular area of your joint. Like you said, if you keep letting your knee go into valgus, you can wear out the medial side of your joint. And of course, this is through repetition. It's not just
Totally.
Just after one workout, but in some cases it can be. It depends on the dosage and intensity of which you're working out. But I love what you also said about the minimum effective dose. I had Dr. Ben Baciccio on this on an interview a couple of weeks ago, and he talked about that. He's a PhD. He's been called a guru of fitness. He's been studying this for 40 years. In fact, he invented slow resistance training. And so he was discussing the concept of working out 2 times a week for about 15 to 20 minutes. And that was what was considered a minimum effective dose. And that sure beats working out 6 times a week for an hour and a half in the gym, which could be overtraining.
Yeah. And again, and it goes back to that. If you don't understand that your body is going to find that path of least resistance, I've done exercises with people who I know are at a lower level of fitness than myself, but yet they could do the actual movement. And it's like, they're talking, they're not tired. And it's like, wow, when I do that exercise, I am exhausted. Everything's on fire. I'm out of breath. And it's like, is it because I'm not in as good of shape as this other person? And it's because I'm turning on more muscle fiber than them. That's why I'm out of breath. It's not that this other person was in shape. It's that they're actually just really not engaging much. So I call these move more trainers, where you could take you could take LeBron James and you could smash him in a workout through just volume. If you just make him keep going, he'll go into those same dysfunctional patterns and he will eventually exhaust himself. That's not the point. So don't just think of moving more, which is what like a P90X type program or Insanity is more focused on. Instead, try to move better. And by moving better, you engage more muscle fiber and you will be getting more bang for your buck.
Yeah, and you'll burn more calories and expend more energy that way. I guarantee you'll be much more sore the next day if you just focus on your form, focus on technique. You can take an exercise like a push-up and make it one of the hardest exercises you've ever done. Yep. A push-up, you can be letting your pelvis go into an anterior pelvic tilt. Your back can go into extension. You could be all squirmy, like what we were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
Or you could engage the external rotators of your shoulder, your abdominals, your glutes. You could pull your abs in, and you could really feel it throughout your whole body. Totally. If you do it properly. And I guarantee you'll get a way better workout and a more effective activation of muscle fibers by doing it with proper form.
Yeah, you got to flip it in your head from thinking, I'm going to see how many reps I can do, because you think, oh, I'm doing more and it's better. Instead, with that same weight, how can you make it to where you can do less because you've made it so engaging? Like, that is the work. And like I tell people, the work is maintaining the position, not doing more. And unfortunately, there are some beyond what we could talk about here, there are some foundational positional things that you do need to learn to to do appropriate exercise. Like you have to understand how to hold your arch. You do need to understand what a neutral pelvis and a neutral spine are. There are some foundational things that, are worth learning. But once you get that, you realize, hey, the work is maintaining the position, not doing the movement. You can do a ton of crappy squats where, again, you go into like a butt wink at the bottom and it's not very engaging, and it allows you to do 60, 70, 80 reps versus, hey, let's get that to where we can only do 20 reps because our body's on fire and we can't hold the shape anymore.
Absolutely. It's tough to do calculus if you haven't learned arithmetic, just basic math first.
I like that. Yeah.
So I love your approach to fitness and training. If somebody wants to learn more about corrective exercise, or if they're a guy or female and they want to learn how to optimize their fitness, wellness while managing their business and other components of their life, especially if they're an entrepreneur or somebody that's really looking to push their life to the next level, how could they get in touch with you?
Easiest way, honestly, is livegreatlifestyle.com. That's the handle on social as well. That's the name of the podcast. Most of that does exist on the webpage. So that's probably the best place. And my contact info should be on there as well. I'm always happy to even hop on a call. And if I can just steer somebody in the right direction, that's good as well. And I always leave everybody with this, like the amount of work that people think it takes is so over exaggerated. And then the benefit that you're going to get is it's too low. We got to switch it in our head. And I promise it's not as much work as most people think to get healthy, to get fit, but the benefit is far greater than what most people realize.
Yeah. It's being smart where you put your energy.
Absolutely.
Appreciate your time, Luke. Thank you.
Thanks for coming on. Sorry, I know I was talking fast because we were on a little time crunch.
All right. Appreciate it. Be safe.
All right. Yep. You too. Thanks.